Welcome to episode 75 of the Travel Talk Show, a part of the ehCanadaTravel.com website and product of a travel marketing group. Today, Junior, we get to talk with the great Loren Christie.
Yes, indeed.
Yes, Loren brings his 25 years of experience to the tourism industry, plus 15 of which Loren was a leadership role in hotel chains as and also with destination marketing organizations. So this guy we're bringing on the show, a lot of you may recognize him from his stint with CTV Morning Show as their travel journalist and influencer. And he'll be joining us today, Colin. We had the pleasure of talking with Loren in our virtual green room while we snacked over some red rose tea and Atlantic lobster. So I'm just, what did you think there, Col?
I think it's going to be a great show.
Yeah.
I mean, getting to know Lauren, prior to the show was very interesting. He seems to be a very cool cat.
Yes.
So we're very lucky to have him on our show, and I'm all ears to what he has to say.
Excellent. But before we bring Lauren on the show, we need to do our Canadian Beaver banter. Time to share some Canadianisms before we bring Lauren on that show. So first of all, let's do a little intro of who we are. We are the co-founders, Tourism Brothers of Canada. My name is Greg Gerard, and next to me is the better-looking, often wiser Colin Gerard. And say hello there, Col.
Yeah, my name is Colin Gerard. I'm the web app developer and keeper of the code of ehCanadaTravel.com.
Excellent. And just to let you know, we are the poutine eating, toque wearing, flannel jacket loving, moose calling Canucks who are passionate about small town tourism and who are affectionately tagged by our followers as the Brothers of Tourism. Every Tuesday, we beam down to you live from our duct tape Cobro satellite. We invite guests from around the world who are knowledgeable in tourism, travel, adventure, small business, and they come and join us on our virtual studio. They're called to talk a little bit about the state of tourism, the good, the bad, and always the better. So again, we're coming to you from our Maple Leaf studio here in Backcountry, Canada. Today, our guest, Mr. Loren, Mr. 25 years of experience in the tourism and travel hospitality, will be joining us. Loren is a recognized tourism expert, destination expert, sales and marketing leader, LGBT plus tourism consultant, and speaker. You might recognize this Loren guy, and I had a couple people contact me and tell me that they used to watch him on the CTV morning show. All of them had great praise for Loren.
I've seen him on the show, and it was quite, it was kind of interesting talking to him beforehand because after seeing him on the show, it's like, it was pretty cool.
Yeah, and just to let you viewers know, he's a 10 plus times better in live action. We know.
Live action.
Yeah, we know because we got to do the Loren chit chat in the virtual.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
we know.
sure.
We know. He's way better than what you saw on TV. What a cat. And boy, does he have a story to share with us today.
Yeah.
Today, yep. So during our interview, we're going to be posted because Loren is out there and we want to make sure that you connect with him. During our whole show, we will be sharing with Loren his contact information, his social media feeds, and of course, his story. So, we're going to ask you to be a bit old school today. We want you to grab that pen and paper so you can grab and write down his contact information on his social medias. We want old school. Get that pen and paper ready because you're going to get some Lorenization, and we're bringing it to you live from Backcountry, Canada, from our virtual studio. So today, what we're going to do today, Col, is we're going to bring Loren on. We want everyone to put their virtual hands together. Welcome, Loren Christie, to our virtual studio stage on the Travel Talk Show. So let's bring Loren on the show. He's our guest. You want to hear from him? Enough of the brothers banter. We're going to bring him on. Here as he comes, Mr. Loren Christie will be joining us just in a minute. And there he is. Welcome to the show.
Yeah.
Thank you. I've never, ever been referred to as a cool cat before. So this is a first. Thanks for having me on, brothers.
There you go.
Excellent. So, Loren, we know a little bit about you because we've had the pleasure of having a little introduction, and we have seen you live on CTV Morning Show. But for some people who might not know you, and they've been hiding, or they come in and want to connect with you down the road, maybe you can fill them in a little bit about who is Loren Christie.
Sure. I mean, you covered it quite aptly in the intro, but I am a traditional hotel guy that worked in hotels for many years with Starwood, the no longer existing company that used to be some of the Marriott that are now currently Marriott properties. But I worked at Destination Toronto way back in the day. I was a tour guide that went across the country and around the world, guiding senior citizens from the States all around, and that was my job out of college. And now I'm in business for myself, doing project management and consulting and training and all sorts of stuff in the tourism business. But as you alluded to, I've had a very fortunate to have had a career with CTV for the last 20 years now, appearing on various CTV properties, namely Canada AM and now Your Morning, the various morning shows that they've had. But so I've been very fortunate to experience a lot of things in travel in all of those roles. So consider myself pretty lucky. I think my country count is somewhere around 65 or 66. I have a competition going with my cousin right now, but we're doing pretty well right now.
Wow. Racking up those shoulder badges, I'm telling you.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
Try to enjoy the places too. It's not all about the tick box, but it's fun.
Yep, exactly. So we got clients throughout Canada there, Loren, and we've been very fortunate in life to be able to talk to some tourism influencers out there, strategists and futurists. And one of the things that we're hearing, it's been a little bit of a tough racket since March 2020. With some of the numbers are quite staggering, where we're losing 54.2%. And we don't want to dwell on the negative as we've mentioned and you've mentioned, but we do want to address it and see what we can learn from it. In your opinion, what are some of the impacts you think COVID has had on tourism business and community since the 2020 official launch of COVID?
Well, I mean, as you said, the financial impacts are there. I mean, they're documented. You could throw numbers out till we're blue in the face. I think the biggest one is the 4 trillion global effect, financial hardships on all the tourism jobs that the World Travel and Tourism Council puts out. But I also think there's, if you kind of look at some of the residual negative effects, there's been lots of talk out there, and I'm sure you've heard, but lots of talk in terms of labor force issues, labor shortages, people not wanting to come into a career necessarily in hospitality anymore because of what's happened. Hard to retain the people that were having careers. They've since moved on. They've retired, chosen to do something else, whatever the case may be. So, I always thought tourism and hospitality in Canada and North America was always wasn't given the due it was anyway, and this has not helped. So there's a long road ahead in terms of getting people back interested and getting people back in the workforce, and that is a challenge. And even one of the other challenges, which is just mind blowing to me, is less than a year ago, last winter, travel was a dirty word. There was a thing called travel shaming. That was a thing. People were shaming people for traveling. There were many stories of communities around Canada where people did not want to see tourists coming into their town, and tourism was almost regarded as ugly. Now that has since started to change, and there are things that are happening to change that, but it's amazing some of the challenges ahead of us. Clearly there's the economic ones and rebuilding and getting back to where we were, but all of these things about trying to the power of tourism and how important it is. And again, one silver lining of COVID is that at least there's now a dialogue about how important it is. And so I think that the tide will turn as soon as we stop correlating and are able to stop correlating the act of travel with the spread of COVID-19.
Okay, that's and that is very true, because when we're talking interesting and when we've done our road trips through the COVID, when there was an opening to have a road trip, we noticed that there was a big issue with, one is staffing, as you mentioned. The owners often were the only ones that were employing these small grocery stores, these small gas stations along road routes. And then we also saw the boarding up of things that were being where you used to have your little intermediate stops on your road trips, the little character stops, the local interaction stops. We were starting to see some of that. So I think it's true. Is there a solution to that? I mean, I know part of the employment issue with some of the larger chain of hotels we've talked to is because a lot of their employees were from Australia and Europe, and we weren't allowing those in to come fill in the positions within these hotels.
That's part of it. But there is part of, talking about the larger hotels. Another reason is that, it's hard. People are laid off. They're at home. We're collecting their CERB or whatever, their EI or whatever they're able to collect right now, and to bring them back over the course of the summer, as an example, in some of the larger urban destinations. Yeah, the weekends were getting kind of busy this past summer because they had people coming in for little staycations.
Yep.
But you can't make a full-time salary off 2 days on the weekend, as an example, as a housekeeper cleaning. It wasn't even worth coming back to work. So it's this fit and start of, trying to get people to come back, making it worth their while for the money. So really what we need to do is just try and stay the course in terms of the current workforce, bringing them back. And, the more business we can get in, the more layered throughout the week we can get it, and get business travel back up, and conferences and meetings and events, those type of businesses that bring, business throughout the week. And that's the challenge now. And it's a real challenge. And in terms of getting people interested in hospitality again, that is a beyond me strategy that, the tourism HRs of Canada and various universities and colleges are going to have to wrap their heads around. How do we incent people to get in there? And there's going to have to be lots of mentorships and internships and all sorts of ways to try and get people interested into getting into this industry. But as you gentlemen both know, and as you said, 25 years, I've been in this industry since I was in high school. So I'm sold. And once you're in it, I think you love it. But we just got to get people in here and loving it again. So
yeah, there's a definite loving going on here in this show. I'll tell you right now with tourism. International visitors, we all know that their spending patterns are a lot higher. On average, they're spending almost $1,050 per visits, and then you've got domestic at $244. And this is one of the things that we're hearing throughout the industry is that that international border situation. Once that opens up, we can bring in the average spend will go up, the average stays go up, the average occupancy rates go up. Everything goes up if we open those borders. We're just starting to open them now, and we're all starting to learn on all the different traffic patterns. And just from what I was researching this morning, we're still not crossing that border enough that our American partners along the border are seeing the benefits of that. So unless we open, they're saying Destination Canada came out and they said, unless we open the borders fully by October, we're probably not looking for the expected levels to 2026. I'm not 2026. I'm not one. I think it's going to happen sooner than that. What's your feedback on that, on how we're opening up our borders and how we can get that flow going?
Well, again, I would say you'd have to break it down into different segments. So let's talk leisure travelers for a second. So I agree with you. I'm hoping that it's probably quicker than that dire 2026 in terms of a leisure traveler coming into Canada. The border, it's constant, right? Like it's in the news right now, all over the place about, yay, we're back open with the States, but what about the PCR testing that has to happen, which is incredibly prohibitive for people that are traveling and wanting to go back to Canada, or for people who want to come into Canada. It's a problem. I do give I think the Canadian government, they tend to lag a little bit behind in terms of, but they will get there. They're hearing it. So I think that problem will go away soonish. A lot of people are talking about that, and that should help. But the problem with talking about levels back to 2026 that won't go away is that once you start taking into the other segments of tourism, whether it's, the sport or business events, which is billions of dollars, it's massive. And the business of big meetings is beyond a Canadian problem. We can have wide open borders and it just has double vaccinated. But in order to get the global meetings industry moving again is going to take a lot more than just no more PCR tests in Canada. That's not the only reason people aren't coming. It is going to take a long time. And any of the indices that you get from like the Global Business Travel Association, the International Association of Professional Congress Organizers, it's the name of the game in business meetings right now is small regional hubs, hybrid virtual meetings, whatever that looks like. So it's going to move forward in fits and starts over the next few years. But international travelers, from a business point of view, it's going to take a long time. I think 2026 is right. Now, the little tiny silver lining of that, which I have heard from various people, contacts and things that I have, is that it kind of goes the same way. Canadian business events and Canadian business travelers, incentive trips, whatever the reasons they're traveling, sales meetings, they're not going out of Canada as much either. So hopefully you may not see international travelers spike up that much, but the domestic business events, meaning might be stronger than it ever was before in a year or two if more people decide to just keep their business at home. So it's not worth the same amount of money as you pointed out at the top of the question, but it's something.
Yeah. Well, and that with the PCR test, that's a huge barrier right now when you're leaving and coming, especially what we're hearing is even if they're doing for a day trip, it's quite a burden to get back in because you need this PCR. Is there anything else that's a hesitancy? Is there anything else that's the traveler from the US to Canada, Canada, US, is there a hesitancy there just because of that PCR? Or is there more to it? I
mean, I think the PCR test, of course, is for some, is one reason why that might be a problem. But I think I'm going to say it's 50-50, but I don't think that's quite the right percentage. But I think there's a ton of people out there that want to get back in traveling. There's no doubt. If you look at, I just attended the Tourism Industry Association of Ontario, part of their summit last week or the week before, and they had someone on there from Google who was talking about searches and using Google searches as a way of indicating consumer demand. And I can tell you, the searching for flights within Canada, for traveling, for going back and forth to the States, all through the roof. So I don't believe that there's going to be a subset of people who are unfortunately probably got scared out of traveling for the next 10 years, a very small group. But I think the bulk of people really do want to get back and travel. But it has to be a little bit easier than it is right now. And one factor of that is the PCR test. Another factor of that is just even understanding what's needed. There's a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of information out there to digest that is constantly changing, and to try and keep up with that amount of information is mind-numbing for anybody. So I know personally a lot of friends who love to travel. They're ready for it. They're searching for it, but they're not quite there yet because it just feels like it's just a little bit arduous. And let's face it, a lot of people travel because they want to relax. It's vacation. And it's not supposed to be hard. It's supposed to be fun. So until they get to that point, it'll tip. So there is some hesitancy. It's not that people don't want to travel. It's just it needs to be a little bit easier. PCR tests will help with that.
Can you I think because there's so much, like it's not only PCR, then you got the vaccine passports, which are provincial, and then you've got national that they're trying to roll out the national. Then you got the quarantines. Do we quarantine when we get back? Do we quarantine when we go there? What countries do we quarantine in? When to mask, when we cannot mask, countries with low vaccination. I mean, there's so much information, and that's where we're getting our feedback from our clients is what is going on, like in plain English, like what is going on?
Whoever can answer that in plain English is going to make $1 million out of the next day. Because the reality is you've got different jurisdictions, different governments, different public health units globally, and there is no central depository for someone to make these decisions. There's a few organizations that have tried. The World Travel and Tourism Council with its Safe Travel stamp, IATA is trying to take a leadership role, but no one actually has the leadership role. And even within Canada, as you said, provinces are different, cities are different, areas are different. And so what really needs to happen for people to travel again too is it has to be simple. Again, it's not easy right now. And so the more that there can be some consolidation and the vaccine passport just becomes the standard and we're not dealing with this test and that test, once the more consolidation happens, the easier it'll get and people will understand. But the harsh reality is right now, there is no simple English because it is a constantly, as we've seen for the last 18 months, constantly changing. It never stops. And it's, again, I was at that, I mentioned that the Tourism Industry Association summit, there was a gentleman there from Canadian Border Services. There were border agents who are finding out over the last year about new rules and regulations 1 hour before they had to implement them. 1 hour. Things, legislate, like who can process that brain? And the person that got on the plane understood it to be one thing. When they got off the plane on the other end, the rules had changed.
Wow.
It's an extreme case. And obviously people weren't being, super hard about it, but it just gives you an example that it wasn't like this is going to come down the pipe in 6 months. Let's roll out a full training program for everyone. So all of the border agents and all of the public understand it perfectly. It was never going to happen. But That all being said, what I will say is, I mentioned to you gentlemen in the green room before we started, I'm actually in France right now. I relocated over here for 3 months just because I could. And it was a little intimidating off the top, going, oh my God, like, what is this? Once you do it, it's done. You get over here, things feel pretty cool. You're not as stressed. Yeah, you got to wear masks in the shops and restaurants here and show your vaccine passport the way we do in Ontario. Once you do it, the kind of fear is gone. And I talked about a little earlier that travel shaming and the idea that travel was a dirty word. It kind of feels like you got to get back in there and try it again. And once you do, it's going to feel a little less scary. And I mean, it depends on the country where you're going. I'm in Western Europe and they're pretty far advanced. So I'm not saying that the whole world is roses right now by any stretch, but I just think as we come out of this, I think if you dive in and just try it, it's not quite as scary. And you just have to, but I had to do some reading. I had to read, I had to double check. I had to make sure the facts were, and even the website, I checked it a week before I left just to make sure I had everything that I needed. So it's not easy right now, but post 9/11, people were very upset about the fact that they had to take their shoes off and their belts, and they couldn't bring water bottles and baby food and all that other stuff. And we figured that out. There was exceptions for mother's milk, and we're going through that phase of change right now. And when we get to the other end, there's going to be some residual effects and things that will not go back to the way they were. But I think people will adapt the way we did post 9/11 with some of that stuff that you don't even think twice about anymore.
Yeah, and that's an extremely good example.
Can we get that in French?
I'm almost there.
Yeah, right on. For our French viewers.
What are so there's like you said, there's so many positives too that all of us were discussing prior to the show and on the show, that there's a lot of positives that come out to every situation. If you look hard enough and work hard enough, there's a positive slant to it. What sort of takeaways for the Canadian tourism industry do you think we have learned that are going to help us move forward in 2022 in a more positive and a growth stage?
Well, I think it's important. I think transparency is huge. I think communication, being open, and it all started with health and safety protocols because it was necessary, right? There was a period as we started coming out of this where if you went on TripAdvisor to read a review, forget about the staff and the quality of the food or whatever the case may be. It was all about how clean the hotel was or how clean the restaurant was, or so all of a sudden, you never had that before. You never had hotels going, we use the P3 purifier in our lobby and scrub this down with bleach. And it became really important to be transparent. And that still exists. And I think moving forward, that transparency is going to exist in other areas. For example, sustainability, which has been a bit of a buzzword for many years, but I think it's going to be different. I think it's going to be different as we move forward. I think now, if you say you're sustainable, tell us, show us, in some places we're doing that a little bit, but I think it's going to be heightened. Same thing, diversity, equity, and inclusion, big buzzwords when it comes to not only business travel, corporate meetings and things that need to be adhered to there, but just in general, leisure travelers want to know that your establishment is inclusive, or some of them do anyway. And so you now need to start showing that and doing that. And, you mentioned off the top, I do some work with the Canadian Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce, and they just rolled out, in conjunction with the federal government with some funding there, a rainbow registered accreditation program, which basically shows if a business is an LGBTQ plus friendly business, and I do the accreditation for them. And it's not easy. You're not going to just get it because you put a rainbow flag on your front window. You now need to be transparent. You now need to show what you're doing, how you're doing it. And I think tourism businesses moving forward, those that are going to be successful, need to be upfront about what they're doing, how they're doing it, and why they're doing it, whether it's health and safety, sustainability, DE&I, whatever the case may be.
That's very, we've heard, it's interesting you brought up inclusiveness, because we've heard that from, I can easily say, over 5 guests recently. where they're all talking, like Miss Tourism Canada brought that up as well, inclusive tourism and how to make it more inclusive tourism. So it's really interesting. And then of course with the green too, I think that, I mean, we've sort of been always on that side of tourism with the adventure tourism and ecotourism and self-sustainability tourism. I think there is a future, a big one there that's coming up down the pipe.
But it needs to apply to, and I think, meetings and events and that type, they're big bears, there's a lot of people flying around the world. And again, that's part of why I think you're going to see a slower return to big events. I think people are making decisions now to say, you know what, I don't have to go to this conference. I'll go to one a year, but I'm not going to go to four. I'm not going to go to four. And whether that's an economic decision or a sustainable decision, it's probably a little bit of both. But I think the Canadian tourism business needs to learn from that. I also think that we're a very happy thing that came out of COVID, and we were talking about this before as well. I think Canadians, we were a little forced to start appreciating our own backyards and travel domestically over the last year and a half. And wow, all of us who did were like, oh my God, this has been amazing. And it's not a matter of that we don't want to travel internationally. It's like, I heard, hey, the brothers went up to did the Dempster Highway. I haven't done that. They said it was amazing. I want to do that. And I was telling you both about my houseboat trip on the Rideau Canal this summer, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. We have a lot of them in Canada. And when I travel internationally, I always hunt them down because I'm never, ever disappointed in what I see or do. And here, 2.5 hours from my front door, for the last 20 years, I've never gone over there to look at it. And we did a houseboat cruise down in July, and it was phenomenal. So I think that's a huge silver lining. I do hope Canadians get out and visit their family and travel the world and, help airlines and cruise ship businesses and all that stuff too. But I also hope there's a good residual that people say, you know what, Canada has a lot of good things to offer. And we should be supporting, domestic tourism, our local tourism businesses, Indigenous tourism businesses who really suffered hard during the pandemic. And what, learn about our own culture and do things. So I hope that that's a lasting legacy. One of the few good ones, but a good one out of COVID.
And the one thing now we've talked with the tourism businesses on so forth, but then what about the traveler? Their trends are changing. Their destination choices are changing. Their habits are changing on what they're looking for out there. And we sort of touched on it, on what the sort of trends are changing towards business and leisure. But what are you learning about some of the new traveler trends that are coming out based on the Google guy you were talking to? He must have had some interesting information there.
Yeah, he did actually. None of it's going to shock you. The searches were up for national parks, ski vacations, camping, road trips, things that were a little bit more outdoor, a little bit away from crowds, things like cruise ships were down. There's lots of talk, and I'm not sure how bad it will be, but that, urban destinations aren't quite as appealing. I think those will come back as vaccination passports take over. But certainly I think, less crowded, a little bit slower, a little bit more, outdoor things. And, I mentioned again, I'm here in France. I have never done the digital nomad thing. It's a blanket term, but basically I'm just, people are now realizing that they can combine travel and work, and that they can go for a long vacation. It used to be, I can't possibly go to Australia. I only have 10 days off. Well, what if you go for a month and work for 2 weeks from there and then take the rest of the time vacation and have your weekends? Because you know what? Video conferencing isn't all that bad. People don't see it as inconvenient anymore. It used to be, what, you're going to call in for the team meeting on a conference call? I don't think so. And now it's like, sure, half the people are, because even as people start going back to the office, I don't think it'll be en masse. And a lot of offices are going to be doing, days on, days off. So I do think a big trend is going to be that trend toward, let's slow it down. Let's go somewhere, instead of going on 3 crazy trips, a couple of times a year, we're going to go on one big trip. I'm going to work half the time I'm there because I can. I'll maybe go a little bit further afield and slow it down. And that's what we're doing right now. And I got to tell you, it's pretty nice.
It's pretty sweet. Yeah. And so with that remote working that you're doing there in France, there's other terms too that have come out: is escapism, workations, travel bubbles. You got slow travel, you got digital nomads, you mentioned, you got remote working, you got conscious traveler. So is this sort of where we're all seeing, and including ourselves, we're very into remote working. We go where we need to go. We set up shop, we work there and do our thing, just like as this, what you're doing. Is this where we're looking at sort of the future of tourism? Is we're going to relate more of a business travel, vacation sort of combination thing?
No, I don't. I don't think it's the future of travel, but I just think I think it's an interesting possibility for people. And I know a lot of people who are like, this is great. I can go on a longer vacation.
Yep.
You know, maybe one partner is working and the other isn't, so they can enjoy a full month while the other, I will call it, I do believe it is going to be a trend. I believe more people will be doing it going forward. I don't think it's going to be the only way people travel, but you know, it's interesting. There's tourism boards around the world who are now marketing this stuff. You know,
I saw that.
Yes.
Costa Rica is about to put out, they're about to pass legislation, I think in a couple of weeks, that's going to make it very easy for remote workers to come down for a year and maybe extend for 2. They've redone their internet connectivity in the country to make it a little bit more accessible and easy to work. So I do think that people will be a trend for sure. So, but not the only trend. That's whatever. But the one I'm not quite sure how it's going to go, and what I'm going to be curious to see is how cruising comes back and whether.
Yeah.
I think
it will.
I think it's going to come back, but I think some of the days of the massive cruise ships again are going to be down a little bit, because I think again there's certain people that'll always love them, but I think there's some people who went, I don't know whether I want to be with that many people and that confined to space. There are destinations that used to be cruise port hubs like a Barcelona or a Venice who during this sort of went, oh, we've had problems with over tourism and mass crowding, and wow, has it been nice. And there's now lots of talk about these destinations limiting the number of passengers coming in on a day. So there will be changes for sure.
And here on the West Coast, we've experienced cruise conversations because there's a big conversation of the cruise ships that come into Victoria, the revenues that are lost, some of the businesses there, and then we've got also the cruise ships that are going up into Prince Rupert and up the coast into Alaska. So there's a lot of discussion on that. That's a very and that's a big industry, eh?
It's huge, and I mean, listen, the list of people who have suffered over the last year and a half is endless. Cruise, from a big business perspective, the cruise business might have been hit maybe the hardest and the longest. I don't have the numbers to sort of back that up for sure, but certainly they're not rebounding as quickly as sort of the airlines are, as an example. Like you look at, again, we'll reference those Google searches. There was huge spikes in airline. Cruise, not so much. Down. Yeah.
Well, Loren, it's been an absolute pleasure, education, and period of excitement for the brothers to have you on the show. Is there anything else that you would like to share with us before we let you go and enjoy France?
You know what? The only thing I would say, and I'll just put on my tourism industry hat as a lover of tourism. Just whatever you do to support tourism, I would encourage you to do it. If you don't feel like jumping on a plane and going to Australia or France, that's totally cool. But you know what? Go to dinner at the local restaurant. I think people have realized that residents can be tourists, and that tourism is important to local businesses, and that it's a little bit more of an entwined ecosystem. It's not visitors and us, and that we're all in it together. So go out there, support, pack your patience, whatever it may be, whether it's a hotel or a restaurant or whatever, because service levels may be a little bit uneasy as people ease back in. So pack your patience, but please do it and support the industry as we try and climb out of the pandemic.
Beautiful words said by Loren Christie. Thank you very much, Loren, for joining us, and take care and talk soon, and enjoy France on your remote working expedition.
Will do. Thank you.
So that was Loren Christie. That was fantastic. So much information.
That was a great show.
Wasn't it? So much information.
Like you're saying, I mean, it's too short.
Yeah.
I mean, we could sit there and pick his brain for hours there, because there's obviously a ton of wealth of information in there.
You know, I knew it before when we were talking about Loren, and I says, look out, we're going to get Lorenized. And I knew we'd get Lorenized. I knew. I did. I knew it. I knew we were going to get great information, and it was going to be enjoyable to have him with us today on the show. Wow. It was awesome.
Like I say, it was a pretty cool cat.
Yep. And thank you to our duct tape for keeping that GoPro satellite going so we could beam the show out to you and to get it out to you through all our social media. One of the things, if you do, make sure that you do look up Loren. He is, of course, on his social media feeds that we've been showing throughout the show. Get that pen and paper. Sure. Yes, we're asking you to go old school, copy those down, and make sure you follow him on his preferred social media feeds. You'll find that. Yep.
Is he still on CTV?
No, I don't believe so. No. I know he does. Yes, he is. He's on shows. Loren, yes. Yeah, he is on shows.
Morning show?
Yeah, he is on the, he's still on the morning show. He's still doing his CTV travel consulting, journalism, and expertise.
Excellent.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So tomorrow you'll find this on our live Travel Talk community. Please go to ehCanadaTravel.com, click the link at the top that says community, and you'll see the travel industry talking on the hour, every minute. There's a whole bunch of people putting up local travel information. You'll be able to find this video there. You'll also be able to find it on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, and LinkedIn feed. So by all means, please like, please share. Please follow our social media pages and show support for Made in Canada Entrepreneurial Tourism using authentic, interactive storytelling tools and techniques. And remember, for us and a lot of us in the tourism industry, the currency of choice on social media is sharing. Sharing is the currency of choice. That is the best way that you can help us compete with the booking.coms of the world and keep Canadian content Canadian. If you're operating a tourism business, operating in Canada, well, answer's pretty simple. You sign up to ehtravel.com. We sign up for free. We'll get you out there. We'll put you on our website. And we just won a national and provincial award-winning website award for that. And for you travelers, a little bit of advice. Book direct with tourism businesses' websites on the ehCanada Travel, or just go directly to their websites. This is huge. A lot of people aren't aware of this. That when you go directly, often what you're saving is you're saving that business 13-18% commissions when they go with the big corporates of Booking, Expedia, Hotel. If they were allowed that 13-18% commission in the old days used to make us new baseball fields, clean our sidewalks, put a new roof on the arena, put shirts on our youth baseball teams. There's a lot of money that's going out. So do yourself a favor, do the business a favor, and book direct. 60,000 paid.
And you'll get a better rate.
Most of the time you will. Yeah, most of the time you will.
And get to learn the personality of the business.
Yeah. I mean, you ask anyone in tourism too, Call, one of the things is you can go to a really high-end resort, which we've done, or you can go and camp in a private campground. And what makes a vacation is the host. If you don't have a good host, no matter what, high and low end, if you don't have a good host, the vacation can often get spoiled by that. If we've been to places where the host is so cool, and it just made the vacation. It does
for sure,
right? So that
absolutely, and you go home and tell your friends. You tell two friends. You share it.
So we have 16,000 pages of adventure pages, interactive, authentic content on our website, 14,000 videos and photos, and over 1,000 communities are waiting for you to visit on the ehCanadaTravel.com. Okay, Junior, who's on next week?
Next week, we have Hal Austin. He is a Canadian Association of Tourism Employees president. Mm-hmm. So it'd be great to hear what he's got to say, especially with everything that's going on with tourism businesses,
staffing,
getting enough employees.
Yeah.
So
and
it's gonna be really good to hear what he's got to say because he'll have all the inside info.
Exactly, and they specialize, and they're like the Canadian Association of Tourism Employees. They specialize by providing services that micro and macro of tourism, education, and employment. Right. So that's sort of what their wheelhouse is. So it'll be interesting to have Hal on the show and to hear a little bit more about their goals, their premises, and their growth into the future. But for now, we are Greg and Colin Gerard, the Tourism Brothers of Canada. We'd like to thank you for joining us tonight. We'd like to thank the great Loren Christie for joining us tonight and spending some of his valuable time with us. And again, thank you for joining us, Colin and Greg.